Now for the top story tonight, another view of the UN, this one more favorable. Joining us now from Washington, Ambassador David Sheffer, who served as an advisor on war crimes under President Clinton and now teaches at Northwestern University Law School. So where am I going wrong, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, the first step or misstep, Bill, is that when you talk about the United Nations not properly fighting the war on terror, in Lebanon they did adopt these resolutions which didn't call upon themselves the UN to disarm the militia, but called on the Lebanese government to disarm the militia. The UN has no authority and no power itself to disarm these militia. It has to look to other parties to do that.
What were the 2,000 soldiers doing there then? Why were there 2,000 soldiers in southern Lebanon then?
The Security Council has never given them the mandate to disarm. What they are there for is in an observing capacity.
Observe what?
To observe whether or not there are movements of troops and other munitions across that area. For example, if Hezbollah moves towards the Lebanese border with Israel, or if Israel moves across that border into Lebanon, then those are situations that are reported on by the force.
Would you agree with me that they missed the movement of an estimated 13,000 missiles that Hezbollah somehow placed in southern America? Somehow the UN missed that.
Well, and so did everyone else, including our own intelligence
but everybody else
agencies.
wasn't there. 2,000 UN were there, standing there, and their job, as you've just described it, was to observe no misbehavior. Somehow they missed 13,000. You know, we're not talking about an American state here. We're talking about a desert region with a few roads and a few villages, and they missed it?
Well, it's not exactly missing it. It's just that their duty on the ground is not literally to be intelligence officers per se. They're in very fixed positions.
Okay, so
they don't have the authority to move on every single road and in every capacity through that area.
You're telling
and Hezbollah doesn't permit them to do so.
Okay, Hezbollah doesn't permit them. That's interesting. Nobody knew that these missiles were there. The Israelis were taken by surprise. You're telling me the UN, 2,000 UN soldiers missed it. Okay? Then they don't have the authority to tell Hezbollah not to have the missiles. But do they have the authorities to call me to say, hey, Bill, you should see what's going on here? Or to call Kofi? Maybe Kofi should have been called, and then Kofi could tell everybody. Maybe that could have happened, Mr. Ambassador. See, you're trying to put a happy face on an abject failure. You can say, yeah, we couldn't stop the Rwanda slaughter when you know the UN troops ran away. You yourself, Mr. Ambassador, did a great job in the Balkans, knowing the United Nations couldn't stop the ethnic cleansing, yet you continue to put a happy face on it, sir, and I'm perplexed.
Well, remember, UNIFIL has been there since 1978, so it's one of the longest peacekeeping operations in the UN system. And their presence on the ground with, frankly, only 2,000 soldiers is not necessarily sufficient to undertake the kind of intelligence activities that, in fact, monitor all of those types of activities.
I find it stunning, sir. The 2,000 UN forces don't pick up an inkling of 13,000 missiles, long range, coming in from Damascus. I find that stunning. Maybe I'm
And
naive.
you should also find it stunning that the U.S. intelligence community did not determine that either.
That's another situation. I think, I think we've been so diverted by the 9/11 and the war in Iraq that we just weren't paying attention. But I'm not going to make an excuse for the U.S. government. Our intelligence agencies obviously have been troubled. But you are making an excuse for the United Nations, which I think is so impotent there isn't enough Viagra in the world. These people aren't going to protect us. They don't know what's going on. And Annan is a shell. He's not helping in the war on terror. I'll give you the last word, sir.
Well, the last word, I think, is that Kofi Annan, as Secretary General, has repeatedly in the last several weeks since this situation erupted, condemned the Hezbollah attacks on Israel and called for their immediate cessation. Now, it's logical for him as Secretary General to want a cessation of hostilities because that's, frankly, what most members of the United Nations want, including most of our allies. So he's expressing a very logical UN position, and he's also responding to the humanitarian tragedy there. He has to get some of that fighting at least under control or minimized in order to get the UN humanitarian relief in. So it's quite logical for him to be taking that position.
All right. All right, Mr. Ambassador, we appreciate your point of view. Thanks very much. Coming next, that American